Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced he is calling off his upcoming outdoor event at the Iowa State Fair this weekend. His campaign stating they were unable to secure a venue stage indoors that satisfies their security requirements, forcing them to cancel his appearance at the Des Moines Register's political soapbox. Since launching his White House bid, Kennedy has faced multiple death threats and has long pleaded for Secret Service protection, which was finally granted just weeks ago after that attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. Trump taking to Truth Social, however, saying he will continue to do outdoor rallies and that the Secret Service has agreed to step up its security. Iowa State Fair officials say there were no specific threats made against RFK, but that his campaign's concerns for his safety are, quote, understandable. So joining me now, I'd like to welcome in a former Secret Service agent, Nichole. Michael, thank you so much for your time. First of all, what is your reaction to RFK Jr. canceling this event or his appearance at the event? Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised at all. July 13th, we saw for the first time in 43 years an actual attempt on a former president. I believe that RFK Jr. and his campaign, as well as those that he's working with within the Secret Service, are operating out of an abundance of caution. There obviously was something there that would indicate that there was a threat that perhaps they were not able to mitigate. And I commend both the campaign and the Secret Service for, outwardly recognizing that and making the decision to withdraw.
And Michael, you said some words there that I'd like to hone in on. Abundance of caution. They were acting out of an abundance of caution. We saw Kamala Harris and Tim Walz at an outdoor event yesterday. What likely went into securing that?
Well, I think that the general public needs to understand that all of these sites are different, right? They're different in scope, they're different in size, they require, different amounts of manpower and effort. So none of them can be treated exactly the same. We also need to look at, the political landscape, the threat landscape within the United States, and not only within the United States, but globally, which would be driving some of the reasons of why they're having indoor events, why they're having outdoor events, and the intelligence that perhaps is directed towards either of the candidates. Like I said, I think that there was something there that caused the Kennedy campaign and the Secret Service to withdraw. I commend them. With Vice President Kamala Harris's large event that occurred yesterday, I believe that perhaps that they're not receiving the same threat level or intelligence that perhaps the Kennedy or the Trump campaigns are.
Well, what would you advise, Michael? Because do you think it is smart, regardless of what intelligence is retrieving, what they're learning? Is it smart to still be doing outdoor events like we saw yesterday from the Harris-Walz campaign, like the former president says he is still going to do? I mean, considering what did just happen last month with the former president. I mean, the fact that a man lost his life.
I do. I do believe, I wouldn't say it's smart. What I would tell you is that I trust in the men and women of the Secret Service, regardless of what happened on July 13th, that there are still very good men and women at the helm there that are making the right decisions. I trust in the tactics, techniques, and procedures that they've been deploying for decades now. And what we saw on July 13th, though I'm not surprised, I truly believe that there are efforts being put into place on behalf of the Secret Service, the local law enforcement that cooperates with the Secret Service and the campaigns that would prevent any particular type of attack happening again. However, with that said, America is at a boiling point. We are seeing political violence being commonly accepted, and I do not think that that is going to change unless the candidates and their campaigns lower that tone. And the responsibility really relies upon the candidates and their campaigns. They're the only ones that can lower that temperature.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Nichole, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.